All right, we'll go ahead and get started for today. First of all, thank you all so much for joining and taking the time out of your day for this webinar on getting started with security operations applications. I hope everyone is doing well, and thank you for being here and for being a SecOps customer. I'm Sarah Wood. I'm from the outbound product management team within security operations at ServiceNow. And I'm excited to be joined by my colleague, Tim Boswell from the same team. Tim, did you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'll just leave it at that for the sake of time.
Yeah, sounds good, Tim. Um, so, yeah, we're not planning to cover any forward-looking statements today, but of course, in case we do, our standard safe harbor notice does apply to this session. And before we get into the agenda, I just wanted to remind everyone that we are really here to answer your questions. This is all about you guys. So we want you to feel totally comfortable using the Q&A button in Zoom at the bottom of your screen to submit questions at any time throughout the session, which will be answered live or during in the Q&A itself. And this is a recorded webinar, so we will be posting it in the community afterwards if you wanted to revisit it or take a look at the links later. And then lastly, once we do close out today's Zoom session, you'll receive a survey on your screen for your feedback. So we'd love to hear from you. You can complete the survey. You can add any additional questions in there, and we'll follow up with you as well. And before we get into the content piece, I do want to take a minute just to remind people if you aren't aware, we have this wonderful customer security symposium coming up September 24th and 25th. It is completely free for customers to attend, partners as well. We'd love to have you there. If you are interested in, available in attending, please go ahead and click the QR code or scan the QR code, or we'll put the link in the chat where you can go check out the agenda and register. So this is really a customer event for security operations customers. It's meant to provide you with an opportunity to learn from each other, learn from some of our expert partners as well across the technology space and implementation, and share best practices. So it's going to be a wonderful event, and it's located in Santa Clara at our headquarters. So again, feel free to register. Thanks, Pete, for putting that in the chat, and we'd love to see you there. Moving on, just our planned agenda for the session. Most important thing is we want you to come away from this with a clear idea of what your next steps could be towards your security operations implementation and point you to some of the key resources that can help you be most successful with that. And really, again, our goal is to support you, answer any questions that you have, and provide you with those resources to start your implementation. And in this first part, we will start with a quick overview, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Tim Boswell, to take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, we're going to start with a quick overview of security operations and then highlight some key resources to allow you and your team to dive a little bit deeper. But I think before we get into that, we have a quick poll. The reason for this is we want to know more about you. And also, based on the results here, I'm going to do my best to tailor my sections based on who we have in the audience. So if we have more vulnerability response people in the audience, or if we have more security incident response, or maybe both, what I will do is I'll do the best to, again, tailor the rest of the conversation based on who we have out here. Just a little bit more. Sarah, how long do we leave this up? About a minute, I think.
Let's see. Looks like
Or
responses are slowing down. I think we can probably end it
okay,
here.
okay, that sounds good. I'll let
All
you do
right.
that. I don't want to press too many
Yeah.
buttons. Okay.
There we go.
All right, so it looks like most people are here to learn about both vulnerability response and security incident response and the applications that fall under that. And if you're wondering like what do you mean by applications that fall under that, you'll see here in a minute. And then it looks like we have some people who are just here to learn more about vulnerability response. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for participating in those polls. So again, very high level. Um, what we're talking about with regards to security operations is we're talking about a portfolio that we've essentially created two different sides, the respond to vulnerabilities and respond to incidents. So if you're new to ServiceNow security operations, you're probably already familiar that you can use vulnerability response to handle infrastructure vulnerabilities and security incident response to handle those incidents that come into the security operations center. And that's how the application first started out. But then over time it grew, and that's why we've organized it into the left side and the right side. So on the left side, in addition to vulnerability response and handling those infrastructure vulnerabilities, we also release configuration compliance so that way we could get into those misconfigurations, and then application vulnerability response so we can handle those application vulnerabilities for those customers that are building a lot of those their own applications and they need to handle vulnerabilities in those applications as well as pen tests and things like that. And then of course those cloud and container vulnerabilities. And then we also branched out into operational technology vulnerabilities. So for anybody on this call who deals in manufacturing or healthcare or energy or anything like that, that's not considered an infrastructure system, you may understand that you have to handle operational technology vulnerabilities in a much different manner. And so that's why that is broken out separately. And we've even taken it further such that there is a separate OT business unit that also handles OT visibility and also OT incident response. But then we kept innovating, and we also released a software bill of materials application, and then most recently the security posture control application. And we're just going to continue innovating from there. We have more things coming with the Xanadu release, and then in our November store release, and then with the next named release, Yokohama. So then on the right-hand side, again, security incident response is how we started out with responding to incidents, and it's more of those standard security operations center incidents, standard security incidents you might receive from like a SIM or an endpoint detection response tool, or maybe even just a firewall or something like that. But then we took it further and realized, well, security incident response, if we made some innovations to that, it would be really good at handling those major security incidents. So what we're talking about is not just a phishing email or a malware or unauthorized access attempt, those types of incidents. We're talking about an all hands on deck type situation. And that's what would be a major security incident. So we do have a separate module within SIR that handles that, and it provides you with that virtual crisis room or that virtual command center, if you will. But then we continue to innovate and released DLP, incident response, and then also Threat Intelligence Security Center. But I skipped what else we released, which is our Gen AI capabilities for security incident response. Both in VR and SIR, we've had predictive intelligence for quite some time, but ServiceNow released Now Assist for ITSM, Now Assist for HR, Now Assist for CSM, and we didn't want to stop there. And so last month we released Now Assist for security operations. Um, and we're really excited about that. And what that's going to offer us, the first set of skills is the incident summarization, and then using also Gen AI for closure notes, but then routing it out with Threat Intelligence Security Center. That is our most recent application that was released earlier this year. And what we're talking about there is taking the threat intelligence we were already doing in ServiceNow to another level with regards to the integrations, and then also doing that case management for cyber threat intelligence. So that's a very quick overview, high level. If I could just talk a little bit more about, like, say, if you want to think like, okay, well, how would a workflow work in security incident response? I think on the next slide, yeah, there we go. Um, so if you're thinking like, okay, I'm not really familiar with security incident response in general, what are we talking about here? What's that workflow look like? So we're consuming those alerts, events, offenses from your SIM tool, whether it's Splunk or QRadar or Microsoft or what have you, or endpoint detection and response tool. Maybe it's a network detection response tool. Maybe it's a network intrusion and prevention system. Whatever security tool that has those sensors. The idea is we integrate those into ServiceNow, and the reason being is most of our customers have tons and tons of security tools. There isn't just one that does everything. And so what we're doing is we're aggregating all that. We're allowing our customers to be that single pane of glass or as close to that single pane of glass. So that way you're not swivel chairing across all those different security tools. What you can do is you can bring it all into ServiceNow. And then because we have that asset information, we can natively link that alert or that event to the asset information and then start to enrich that data. And then also using the flow designer or process automation designer to start doing some automation with regards to that security incident, whether it's automatically prioritizing the security incident based on the data that we pull in from the CMDB, or doing other things like sending the observable from that incident out to that threat intelligence tool, sending it out to virus total or recorded future and bringing back the results. So that way we don't have to waste time doing that manually, but then also using ServiceNow playbooks to determine what is that response action or even orchestrating that response action. And so what I mean by that is the playbook, if it's a manual workflow responding to that incident, the playbook can guide that analyst so that way they're following a set of consistent process and procedures, or maybe they're a newer analyst and they just need some guidance, or orchestrating that response action using ServiceNow to automate the response. Let's say, one of our playbooks is if there's a phishing email or malware detection on a laptop that belongs to finance, just automatically isolate it. We don't even want to take that risk that something could happen to finance, so just automatically isolate it. And through our integrations to the EDR tools, that's what we can do with ServiceNow. So that's kind of an example workflow with SIR, and then routing it out by providing the post-incident report at the end. That's very easy to do. What we want to do is minimize that administrivia that the analysts have to do. Maybe those security analysts, we don't want them doing a bunch of report writing. So using ServiceNow to minimize that work through questionnaires, or using Now Assist to help create that. And then likewise, the workflow for vulnerability response, very similar. What we're talking about is integrating those vulnerability scanners, whether it's the infrastructure vulnerabilities that we consume from Tenable or Rapid7 or Qualys, or the application vulnerabilities from Veracode, bringing those into ServiceNow, and then again, automatically linking that up with the asset information that's already in the CMDB or elsewhere within ServiceNow. So that way we can understand who owns this system, who does it need to be assigned to, what's the priority of that vulnerability, not just looking at the severity that we're already consuming and pulling in from through our integration with the National Vulnerability Database, but also looking at that business intelligence, and then continuing to enrich that data by pulling in threat intelligence so we can understand, does this vulnerability have an exploit in the wild, or is there a POC for that exploit already out there? So we could do more than just, okay, yes, the NIST says the vulnerability is this severity, but there's some other things and other factors that I want to take into account to prioritize that properly. And then using ServiceNow, what we can do is using things like assignment rules to automatically triage that vulnerability and assign it to the right person. And if that person needs if they need to transfer it to somebody else, they could quickly do that within ServiceNow. Or if it is theirs, they can easily schedule the patch. They can do that patch orchestration from within ServiceNow, again, minimizing that swivel chair. Or if they need an exception or deferral because they can't apply that patch or update right now, we can still track that in ServiceNow. We can assign that to somebody to approve that, or maybe we need to make sure that our GRC organization, that they have visibility into those exceptions and deferrals, because if it's going to cause a control to slip, they can quickly identify that, because maybe the asset owner won't understand that, or maybe the security team doesn't know what the impact is of that exception or deferral. And then again, just like with security incident response, using the integrations to do orchestration on the other side. Same thing here. We can use those out of the box pre-built integrations that we provide in our store to do things like trigger a rescan. So the asset owner says, yep, I remediated that vulnerability. Good to go. I'm all done for the day. Well, maybe they didn't. Maybe they think they did, but they really didn't. And so what ServiceNow can do is trigger a rescan to validate, has that vulnerability been remediated or not, and then take it from there based on those results. So high level, this is what we're kind of thinking of when we think about the workflow with vulnerability response. All right, where are we here? So the next thing I want to provide is high level look at some of the resources that we provide to our customers as well as our partners. So if you're just starting out thinking like, okay, what do I need to do to deploy this in my environment? Or what should I be thinking about as I plan this out? Or what kind of conversations should I have with my implementation partner? We provide a lot of resources for you to learn about the products, learn what it will take to implement it, learn what it will take to support it and maintain it, that care and feeding, and just keep it up to date, and also acquire those new innovations that we come out with on a regular basis through the store. First thing is the product documentation. This is where you'll find all the latest product information and the release notes, as well as other helpful content like setup guides and instructions on learning about entitlements and things like that. We are going to be sharing. Oh, good. You've already started sharing these links in the chat. That's great. So the product documentation, this is probably my favorite resource. This is something I have open every day, all day, whenever I'm talking about the applications or thinking about the applications. I'm almost always referring to our product docs. And this is available to the public. You don't need to sign in to view our product documentation. Um, so just know that we're very transparent about our product docs. The next thing I believe is our community YouTube channel. Yep, and there are some really helpful and useful videos on this channel. There are some videos that are very in-depth and kind of long that will span like an hour, sometimes 2 hours. So some very technical and deep uh, topics that there are videos on, and we bring in ServiceNow. We bring in some subject matter experts that have the ability to go very deep into that topic. But then also there's some bite-size videos in our YouTube channel. So if you're like, well, okay, I heard Tim talking about major security incident management. I just want to know a little bit more about that. I don't want to really get into how do I set it up and how do I use it? How does this integration work? And I just want a quick little high level. You can also find those short 5 to 10 minute overview videos within our YouTube channel as well, and then everything in between. So this is another good resource that I often refer to a lot, and I send people a lot if they ask questions like, "Hey, tell me more about this application." Usually, what I'll do is I'll go find a short video about it in our YouTube channel. I'll just send them that link. So, speaking of learning more and really getting deep, the training and certification is located at Now Learning. And this is where, very similar to our YouTube channel, we do have some very short trainings, some on-demand trainings. They're just like an hour or a couple hours if you just need to get acquainted with something. But then if you're thinking like, okay, I need to learn how to administer and support and maintain this application, or I need to learn how to implement something, or I need to understand how my implementation partner is going to implement something. This is where you can also go to really get deep and understand more about the application, really get under the hood there and really understand how it works. But there's also some hands-on simulators, some on-demand simulators and on-demand labs that are located in Now Learning. that you can use. Some of these do uh, come free, maybe with your subscription or your license, and some you do have to pay a little extra for. I know that we also offer some learning credits. So if you want to know more, or if you need to understand more about how that works, you should talk to your account team, your ServiceNow account team, and they'll be able to help you with that, help you understand how you can get access to some of those trainings that are there that are paid, and you will need to log in. So now we're getting into some things that are a little bit more intellectual property. And so I do want to make it clear you will need to log in to Now Learning. And so if you don't have access to that, you'll want to talk to your account team. Or what you should probably do is just start out with your platform team, your ServiceNow platform team, to understand how you can get access to Now Learning, um, and go from there. And then one last thing I will mention before we move on, that's also where you will sign up if you want to take a live course, whether it's in person or virtual. We do offer a lot of live instructor-led courses, and this is where you would sign up for that. Just a couple more things. The security operations community. Um, this is where we have a lot of blog posts, a lot of our announcements, and also where customers and implementation partners will often go in and ask questions and also answer questions. So the community is a great place to interact with ServiceNow experts, whether they're ServiceNow employees or partners or people from our expert services or customer outcomes, but also just to really stay up to date on the latest and greatest. And there's also some additional resources in here as well, like some quick start guides and links to other implementation guides and user guides and things like that. So the security operations community, this is if you don't remember any of these resources, but you only remember one, this is the one that I would recommend you remember the most is the security operations community. Because from here you can pretty much get to everything. Because whenever we post something new or provide a new resource or new implementation guide or quick start guide, this is where we're going to announce it. But then also whenever we release a new innovation or or an update or something like that, like a new application or a significant update to an application, this is where we're going to announce that. I think just yesterday I saw one of our teammates post an announcement saying, "Hey, here's what's new in Xanadu for security operations." So for anybody who doesn't know, the Xanadu release went live today and is available today and is generally available today. And so if you're wondering, okay, well, what's new for security operations in Xanadu, go to the security operations community and look for that announcement. And then just one last resource that I'll mention, and this isn't by far an all-encompassing list of resources that I've gone over here, but this is the last one I'm going to mention on this webinar, is our developer site. So for those of you who are a little bit more advanced, maybe you're on this call and you're actually the platform owner for your organization and you're just on here because you want to learn more about the security applications. If you don't know about the developer site, this is something that you should really check out. If you're on here because you're from like the security engineering team and you're going to be supporting SecOps for your security organization, um, once you go through those other resources and learn more about security operations, you will want to come back here to the developer site. So this is the more where the more advanced type stuff is, in my opinion. So this is not a site that I go to on a regular basis, like the community or the product docs. This is where I go if I need to look at something that's a little bit more advanced, like the if I need to know more about the APIs, or if I need to learn something about how the UI builder works. But then also this is where we have the developer program, which is free to join. The developer ecosystem for all levels provides the ability to collaborate with other developers globally. So it's a little bit beyond just that community. We have reference developer resources. So very detailed documentation on Now Platform APIs, the libraries, the next experience UI components, and other things like that. And then this is also the last thing I'll mention here, try and keep it on time. This is also where you would sign up for a personal developer instance, also known as a PDI. And the PDI is a great place to just try things out and break it because you can always just reset it or go back and get a new one. So I think I'm probably taking up a little bit too much time here. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now. And Sarah, I'll
Awesome.
let you talk about the implementation journey and I'll try to stop for a little while and get us back on time, maybe.
Sounds great. Thanks, Tim. So yeah, we're going to switch gears a little bit and focus a bit more on sort of the how you can get there. How can you start your implementation? And of course, we're going to start with a poll. So I'm just launching this poll now to get a sense of where you are at in your implementation journey. Are you implementing now or this quarter? Are you planning to implement later in the year, or perhaps into early 2025? Or no plans to implement yet, which is obviously totally fine. And then anything else, feel free to let us know in the chat. It's always interesting to hear where you are at. And so we'll keep it open for a few more seconds while we get some more responses in. But it looks like most people are in the journey now or in this quarter, with the next set of people planning to implement in the year. So implementation is front of mind for most people, and then some people not currently planning or some other options. So we'll wrap that up. It's great to kind of see where people are at. And we want to just kind of talk about some of the options that you should be aware of for your implementation journey. So ServiceNow customers typically will follow one of these three models, and there is, flexibility, as you can see. So first, we have a ServiceNow-led implementation, which will involve engaging with our expert services team who will guide your implementation with leading practices, or they can collaborate with you and your implementation partner in more of a co-delivery model, which will just help, boost your success with your implementation. The second one we see here is your, fully partner-led implementations, which I would say are the most common type among SecOps customers, where you can choose from a range of certified partners in our ecosystem that have ideally a specific expertise in SecOps, and ServiceNow products as well. And we'll go through that Partner Finder resource a little bit later, which is a super helpful place to go if you're just looking for a partner, and you want to be able to get a bunch of information on them in terms of their ServiceNow expertise. And I'll highlight as well that not only is it important that the organization is certified and experienced, but also that the individuals working with you from that organization are experienced in SecOps implementations, because it is more of a specialized area. Lastly, we have self-implementation, which is certainly possible. It would mean your organization is leading the entire implementation and would leverage, all of the existing resources and tools that we're going through today. It's not typically recommended for security operations, just given the scope and complexity, and certainly having expert services or an implementation partner working alongside you can only help expedite and remove the need for future rework. So we do, recommend having that expertise alongside you. So you can sort of, focus on the right outcomes, functionality, and scope your implementation. And this is showing a high level crawl, walk, run, fly model, which really kind of depicts that graduated approach to implementing, where you're focusing on getting the right foundations in place first. So, starting with things like getting the right data coming in, having your platform core setup, so things like roles and groups set up for whatever scope you're starting with. So maybe it's vulnerability response, application vulnerability response, configuration appliance, security incident. So depending on what you're starting with, it's getting all of that sort of setup done. And once you have that set up, you can move into things like where reporting will be, performance analytics, advancing into other applications and data coming in. Still on the foundational side, and can take 3 to 9 months to sort of move into crawl maturity as you start turning things on, like performance analytics and integrations such as patch orchestration or starting, major security incident management. Threat intelligence is another thing listed here to support your security incident response. Um, and then there's things like cloud security for configuration compliance, which can be like another entire implementation. The good news, though, when you're on the platform, there's a lot of consistency or parity in the design. So implementation from one area like vulnerability response will have a lot of similarities to moving into something like application vulnerability response. So it's great that you sort of get that overall understanding of the path and you can kind of apply that knowledge as you move through different applications. With security incident response, of course, there's different capabilities with automations and playbooks. So there is a different knowledge base required than VR, but you're again getting benefit from those automations as well from day one. Taking a step back here to look at the kind of maturity model for VR, there are a number of different stages of maturity when it comes to implementation. And this is not specific necessarily to ServiceNow, but something kind of, some of it speaks to more of an industry-wide approach. But as you're starting out, you're really typically looking to get out of that maturity level 0, which is your more manual work, having spreadsheets that you're exporting out of your scanner, emailing things to remediation owners to deal with incidents, and maybe not having so much visibility across the team. Whereas as you leverage ServiceNow, you move towards at least having that level 1, which is going to be a major jump as you bring in more automation and data into vulnerability response, as you set up things like risk calculators to prioritize, filter, and kind of know where to start with your vulnerabilities, grouping them, assigning them as they're being loaded in, and just overall automating a lot of that manual activity and having more of that visibility across a single system of record and action. And then moving into maturity level 2 that's shown here, you have that additional context, additional level of understanding of assignments, additional integrations, and giving you a bigger picture of your infrastructure and ability to manage the whole life cycle of vulnerabilities. So maybe it's change requests, maybe it's exception requests, and just having that kind of awareness connection to the compliance team and ability to build out even more automation and efficiency in your processes. Some customers will want elements of this right from the start of their implementation, especially if you're already using ServiceNow, you're already using integrated risk management, and if you have, a CMDB already, a CMDB team, you can actually use, your scanner data to augment the CMDB. Again, keeping in mind that having a CMDB is not necessarily a prerequisite by any means into getting started. And then moving into enterprise risk trending, where you have sort of all your scanners integrated across, cloud, application, configuration. Coming in, you have a really complete picture of your attack surface and oversight at a, broader level. So it is possible. This is sort of letting you know customers are there. So it is something that you can get to as well. We have implementation experts on today. So if you have questions, of course, let us know. But we'll move on to a brief kind of overview of security incident response. That similar cycle of starting out with more of a manual process across disparate tools when you're looking at maturity 0, and then adding in automation to get to maturity 1. You have like a huge boost in your efficiency when you've got integration from different SIM tools and incident creation without having to manually do that work. Again, bringing that data into that single source of record and action and gaining, leaps in your efficiency right away. And then once you've got the data in the platform, you have the ability to layer on automation, and that can be in terms of, automated calculations for prioritizing things, improving your visibility moving into maturity 2, you have more advanced functionality, such as your correlated threat intelligence data from your threat intelligence module, and additional, enrichment to better guide your decision making and accelerate your response. And over into level 3, we have more of, that orchestrated remediation with your playbook set up, and that provides more of a guided stepwise approach to handling incidents, more automated response, more integrations to enhance analyst efficiency. Um, we typically would recommend achieving stage 1 as the first step, so not to be overwhelmed with all of the different elements that we've been sort of going through, but just getting to stage 1 allows you to reach so much value really, really quickly. Just moving into kind of where to start with getting your maturity story in action. We do provide a number of different story themes to help give some guidance and understanding to what to focus on as you get started. And these are all in the resources that we're going to share out in Now Create. And there's detailed steps into what, things like core setup involves, obviously installing. In this case, we're looking at VR and its supporting applications. Maybe it's patch orchestration, for example, and having a really good understanding of the different user personas, and then moving into integration setup and recognizing sort of these steps are there are resources that will help you be successful and provide you with a little bit more of a blueprint to work from to ensure your success in your implementation. Moving on to the right side, we have things like change management, and that could be more of a maturity that you get to over time. But in terms of your out of the box functionality, it's a really easy thing to add into phase 1, depending on how much your remediation owner team can take on, as well as something like exception configuration. Again, out of the box, it's sort of ready for you. Just need to plug in the approver names and get the workflow going. Notifications are another story theme that we have outlined. It's not something that you necessarily want to notify an assignment group when they get a vulnerability. That'll be, overload. But you're wanting to make sure there's the right amount of notifications for your workflows. And, dealing with organizational change management and making sure that as a CI owner, people are coming into the workspace and finding their work there, things like that. And then report configurations, dashboard configuration. These are, again, more advanced things in the story themes that you'll find resources for as well. As with VR, security incident response has similar story themes and some different ones as well. So starting with installing them, getting them from the store, setting up user personas, these are similar across all applications. So it's great to have that knowledge and be able to bring it forward in your implementation. That's a big benefit of using the platform. Security incidents have uniqueness with their access restrictions, just given the sensitivity of data in security incident response. So as an organization, you can make those decisions as to what you want your platform admins to be able to access. Again, integration setup, you want to bring data in, you want to automate things. So that's another key piece of it. And then whether or not you enable your CMDB to be sort of updated from data here, this will play out in your risk calculations and will only add more benefit to what the solutions can bring, but it's not a requirement. It's not a showstopper for getting started. You can just do more as your CMDB gets more mature. These themes are out there. They're in Now Create. I will move on those so that we stay on time. But we want to highlight with that some of these key resources that we think are really important for you in the how piece and getting started with your implementation. So I'll get right into the Partner Finder. This is a great online tool to search from over 2,000 of our partners in our ecosystem, and really valuable resources. You have the ability to see which partners specialize in security solutions and how many, successful implementations they've done, their CSAT scores, and things like that. And you can filter it by solution. So if we have time at the end, I can walk us through that a little bit, but we will be sharing the link in the chat as well. We did mention expert services. So expert services is our team for service-led implementations and co-delivery with partners uh, and other best practice resources. So your account team can plug you into this if you're interested in learning more, but just know that there is a lot of flexibility. So you might engage with expert services in more of an advisory capacity, or perhaps more on the front lines of your implementation or in a co-delivery model. So there's a lot of flexibility and different packaged services that you can look at. And I'll move on to Now Create as well. Now Create, we've mentioned a couple of times, and they really provide that on-demand guidance to support the success of your ServiceNow projects. And they have so many resources, and we're going to share some links in the chat to really support your implementations. Success packs, scoping guides. There are starter stories that you can leverage, recommended implementation sequences. And so really, really encourage you to check that out. You do need to log in to access these things, but they're readily available. And the story themes we went through are also from there. And we do have quick start guides as well that provide step-by-step implementation guidance, all of which is designed to help you be successful with your implementation and leverages tons and tons of experience in implementation to do so. So highly, highly recommend that as well. And I'll drop those all in the chat now, but we'll move on to our final section as well, where Tim is going to take us through the why, so the value piece quickly before we wrap up. And
Yeah.
I'll get us started with our poll here.
Thanks, Sarah. And while people are doing that poll, I did want to mention, and before we transition completely off the implementation topic, during our last poll, an audience member said that they're doing a hybrid implementation where they have a partner leading, but they're training their own internal staff and allowing them to make small changes. And so while people are completing this poll, I just wanted to mention that I have seen customers that do that achieve a lot of success there. And the reason why is because our implementation partners, they do this day in and day out. They do these implementations every day, all day for customers. And so it's a really good idea to bring them in. Even if you don't want to turn over your entire implementation to an implementation partner, it's still a great idea to do what this person said, where they're doing a hybrid implementation where that implementation partner is just doing some work, but then because that implementation partner may be leaving and you still need to run your installation of security operations. And then also the other thing I want to leave you with is the idea of delegated administration. So oftentimes the platform team might say, hey, I don't have the bandwidth to do all those things that you want to do. So usually what we see customers do is the platform team will delegate certain administrative functions to like a security engineering team that can handle certain things within that security operations application. So because we were talking about implementation, I did just want to mention that what this person said about doing a hybrid implementation where the partner is leading it, but not doing all of it. I have in fact seen a lot of success there because again, those implementation partners, that's their full-time job. That's what they do is these implementations. And so they are great experts and great resources for you to use. So with that, I'm going to try not to pontificate anymore and move on. So thanks again for responding to these polls. This is a great way for us to better understand you. Where I'm going to go now with regards to achieving value with security operations. Um, if you haven't considered it already, what I want to talk about is what kind of value you can expect to see by getting started with security operations. And again, we'll kind of close out that poll. What are your top desired business outcomes? Accelerate response to security incidents. Yep. Accelerate response to critical vulnerabilities. Oh yeah. And then reducing those security incident that reducing the effort that you spend on security incidents and then reducing that attack surface. Yeah, I can totally relate to all that. Um, how are customers doing that today? Customers that have already implemented. So all of those things that we just mentioned in that last poll and all of the things here on this slide, depending on your priorities, our customers have been able to achieve those results within just 6 months of going live. To highlight a few, analysts closing 2 times the number of security incidents on average at 12 months. So what I mean by that is within about 6 to 12 months of implementing security incident response and getting that up and running and getting to a baseline level of maturity with that, analysts are able to close twice as many incidents. They're able to triage, investigate, and remediate twice as many incidents in that amount of time, and cutting the mean time to remediate a vulnerability in half within just 6 months of implementation. And our best-in-class customers are achieving even greater results than that. So these are the type of results that we're here to help you achieve. And sorry, Sarah, if I'm jumping around a little bit too much with regards to making you change the slide. So sorry about that. So if we look at how we do it ourselves, so here at ServiceNow, we're not only the developer of these applications, but we're also our own client. We're also our own customer of these applications. Um, so we do use vulnerability response internally here. We are customer zero. We use vulnerability response to move from using manual labor-intensive processes to respond to vulnerabilities. And, and we are leading to over 99% accuracy in assigning vulnerabilities. So that means, oh, and also exceptionally high SLA attainment. And we did achieve an 85% gain in productivity. So what that means is by implementing vulnerability response ourselves, we were able to achieve those results. And then moving on to security incident response, that next slide. Again, this security incident response was originally born out of a problem that we had to solve ourselves as a cloud services provider with our own private cloud and government cloud. And then it was productized and developed, and it's now, as you know, available to our customers with all the innovations and the portfolio that it's grown in today. So we used this ourselves originally many years ago and contributed to the innovations, and so we still use it today. As such, our internal security has gained immense value, moving from manual processes to being able to prioritize alerts and automate processes, leading to over $800,000 in staffing cost savings and thousands of hours saves. So what that means is, as ServiceNow, for anybody who doesn't know ServiceNow as a company, we've been going through explosive growth over the last decade or more. And with that comes an increase in attacks, but you can't hire your way out of that problem. You can't think that you're going to hire enough people to keep up with all those attacks. So by using ServiceNow, the automation with regards to prioritizing those incidents and with regards to automating the response to those incidents, that's how we're able to keep up with those attacks, and that's how we're able to save all that money in staffing costs, because we're not trying to hire our way out of our problem. What we're able to do is we're able to automate our way out of that problem. So when it comes to measuring success, and by the way, this chart right here, this is available within the community, just like all these other resources that we've been showing you. So to get to those results, setting your vision and outcomes is a critical first step in your implementation. And so this example here, again, it's available to you in the community. These are just some examples of the types of outcomes you can choose to prioritize in your security operations implementation. Many customers will initially select one or two outcomes that relate to their key challenges in order to prioritize those for their first implementation, or prioritize those for their implementation when they're first rolling it out, and then be able to select appropriate metrics to measure their progress. there's a whole number of resources that we've been going through, and those resources can help you get to that level of maturity that you need to. And one of the things that I failed to mention back at the beginning when I did the overview was that ServiceNow comes with a lot of reports and dashboards and metrics out of the box that you can start leveraging immediately. And then as you go on your maturity journey, you can start to tailor those to better match your environment and start to use the ones that are more relevant to you. So with just a few minutes left, just a few more resources I want to go through real quick. So the Customer Success Center, um, what that has is, again, this is all right there at our servicenow.com website. Very easy to find. This one has more leading practices, resources, tools, and calculators. It's another way to get to these various events like this one, like this webinar, other services. Learn more about the value methodology, which is our framework to envision, create, and validate value from your ServiceNow products, and it helps you champion your success. The value calculator on the next slide, this is something I was going to talk about, but this is being revamped right now. So I'm only going to mention this and say that while this is not available today, they are going to release a new version of the value calculator. And so this is something you just kind of want to keep in memory for later or bookmark for later. And when they do release the next one, what this is going to do is this is going to be a resource that will provide a quick and easy way to see the annual business value you can achieve using ServiceNow. So whether you're thinking like, okay, I've rolled out security incident response or vulnerability response, and I'm ready to move to the next level, but I need to understand, am I getting value out of what I've installed? And can I justify moving to these additional applications? This is something that will help you with that financial justification. And then ServiceNow Impact. What ServiceNow Impact is it's a value acceleration solution designed to maximize the value that you get out of your investment with ServiceNow. This is more of a more advanced way of calculating your return on investment and the value. It gets a little bit more in depth. It has it's beyond that calculator that I talked about a minute ago. This is going to be looking more at metrics and whether or not you are actually uh, achieving those goals that you set out when you first decided to implement security operations. And then it also provides you with some other goals and some other metrics that maybe you haven't considered that you can use in the future as you continue to mature your operation and mature your implementation alongside that. And then the last thing, we'll try to wrap up and still leave at least a couple minutes in case there's any questions. The um, the summary of resources here, we will be making this available, not just here, what Sarah posted in the chat, but afterwards, if you go to the ServiceNow community, you'll be able to find these links. But just one more time, whether we're talking about the partner finder, so that way you can get a subject matter expert to help you along with that implementation, or the Now Learning to access those Now Create resources or take classes, or the community so you can engage and interact with other ServiceNow experts or your peers out there in the customer community. That product documentation, that's something you're going to want to hold on to for a long time. And then the support website, if you need help, if there's something not functioning, or you just need to read up about maybe there's a fix to something that you've been having an issue with, that's support.servicenow.com. That's where you're going to find that. One more plug for the symposium that we're doing in a couple weeks at our headquarters. Again, this is a free event. All you need to do is show up. Um, Sarah, you know what? I'm gonna let you actually talk about this a little bit more in case you want to say anything else about Connect, and then we'll get into the questions because you could speak to this
Yeah,
better than
great.
I can.
No, I think we covered it in the beginning pretty well, but for anyone that kind of joined later, we'd love to see you there. It's a free event for our customers, partners are going to be there. You can share resources, share best practices, and we'll have breakfast, lunch, we'll have a networking reception. I'd encourage you to check out the agenda on the website or by scanning the QR code. We'll share that again in the chat. And yeah, we'd love to see you there. So please join us, register. We'll keep an eye out for your registration. And I guess just to wrap it up with the last couple of minutes, this is part of our Live on ServiceNow series. So if you're in the community and you want to check out more events, you can go ahead and register for more. We'll be running office hours next week for SecOps, so feel free to join us.